Shalom, I am Valerie Moody of Covenant Footsteps Ministries. Today is lesson 13 in our series on the Moedim. This is part 3 of a 3-part teaching on Shavuot. This lesson is called The Rhythms of God. There is a cadence in God's divine appointments. There is a rhythm in the way He highlights His feast days and times them. Shavuot is a festival of rhythm, a festival which reveals a recurring sequence of events and actions. It comes at the end of 7 sevens, on the 50th day. 50 is the number of Jubilee, liberty, and freedom. Thus there is a rhythm between Shavuot and other biblical events which are associated with the number 50. One is the year of Jubilee. Jubilee is counted as the 50th year. Shavuot is counted as the 50th day. For 7 sevens before Shavuot, Israeli farmers are harvesting their barley. They're also watching the emerging wheat crop, looking for the finest sheaves for the first fruits offerings on Shavuot. Shavuot dedicates the wheat crop to Adonai. So growers are scanning every vineyard, field, and orchard in Israel. They are searching for the best of all the first fruits. They will bring first fruits to the temple and first fruits from the 7 species of Israel, identified in Deuteronomy 8, verse 8. The 7 species are figs, grapes, dates, pomegranates, olives, wheat, and barley. They also bring their free will offerings, their thank offerings, and their peace offerings. These days of counting, watching, and waiting are part of the rhythms of God. If we're counting or waiting, watching for God to move on our behalf, we're part of the rhythms of God. The rhythms of God are rhythms of preparation. So He may be preparing us for something if we are in a season of waiting on Him. At the temple in Bible days, Shavuot is the culmination of great waiting and preparation. As pilgrims arrive, they have left behind their work of harvesting and storing their produce. Their work is still unfinished when they come to the temple. Yet they reverently take time away from their labors to keep this Mikra Kodesh, a sacred assembly. Each pilgrim brings something which will bless Adonai from the abundance of His provision for them. The first offering of Shavuot is the daily Tamid, the morning lamb, which will be followed later with the evening lamb, in keeping with Exodus 29, verse 38. The second offering of Shavuot is specific Shavuot offerings from Numbers 28, verses 26 through 31. The third offering of Shavuot is peculiar. The high priest waves 2 loaves of leavened bread at the altar. This offering represents Israel's national first fruits offering from the national wheat crop. Leviticus 23, verse 17 provides the recipes for these loaves. The full recipe produces 2 giant loaves, 21 inches long by 12 inches high, by 12 inches wide, and 3 inches high. These are large loaves of bread. They're fairly flat, but there's something significant which the high priest must elevate to wave at the altar. Now, the high priest does not burn bread on the altar because Leviticus 2, verse 11, prohibits burning leaven or honey on the altar. And these loaves of bread contain honey. In these 2 loaves, we see a transcendent truth. 2 loaves signify the Torah and the Spirit on Shavuot, a connection which Adonai affirms in Exodus 19 and Acts chapter 2. 2 loaves also represent Israel and the Gentiles together in one offering. This is a prophetic picture of one new man in Ephesians 2, verse 14. Waving 2 leavened loaves at the altar is an invitation for you and me. This indicates his desire for 11 people to come to him. Reading the book of Ruth on Shavuot illustrates this. In this story, a Gentile woman joins the people of Israel and the God of Israel. Now, the fourth offering of Shavuot is the moment when the pilgrims bring their own first fruits offerings to fulfill Deuteronomy 26, verse 10. At the altar, they worship in gratitude for their harvest, and they pray the first fruits prayer from Deuteronomy 26, verses 5 through 10. Their prayer publicly proclaims God's faithfulness. Pilgrims leave their first fruits baskets beside the altar, and their first fruits offerings become the property of the priests. These offerings help to support the priests. This scene reflects rhythms of work, rest, and worship in God. His rhythms are for our good. Offerings bless the offerers who feel confident that Adonai abundantly provides for them. If we struggle in the area of giving offerings, let's remember his faithfulness to provide for us. The fifth offering on Shavuot is the moment when pilgrims bring their free will offerings, meaning peace and fellowship offerings. Pilgrims share meat, grain, and wine with Levites, widows, orphans, and strangers to fulfill Deuteronomy 16, verses 10 through 12. Thus, Shavuot is a time of great simcha, or rejoicing. There's so much sharing of food. These are amazing festival banquets. In Bible days, not attending Shavuot at the temple meant losing the joy of shared offerings. Shavuot creates an opportunity for everyone to give something and to reaffirm their commitment to God's covenant, and also strengthen their identity as one community. It is the same for us. Community building makes each of us stronger. Each person can tip the balance for everyone between curse or blessing through our personal obedience or disobedience. Now, Shavuot is the moed in the middle of the menorah of the feast. It is the fourth of 7 moedim in the Father's proclaimed and revealed divine appointments. Shavuot occupies the middle branch or central stem of the moedim menorah. It is the strength of the menorah, since the side branches have no foundation of their own. All side branches spring from and extend from the middle branch. Now, when we consider that Shavuot is a festival of Torah and Spirit, we understand why Shavuot is the moed in the middle. Adonai's Torah and Spirit, which we commemorate on Shavuot, support, strengthen, and help define all of his moedim. To eliminate the middle branch of the lampstand would cause the light of the menorah to fail, yet God's rhythms are rhythms of light. For a moment, let's visualize the light of the temple menorah. The sanctuary did not require the illumination of the menorah as much as it required God's divine presence. For this reason, the menorah's lamps were not turned toward the sanctuary. They were directed toward the middle branch, which signified King Messiah. Now, if we visit Jerusalem today, we will see the menorah that's been recreated for the third temple. If we have an opportunity to do this, it's standing on a landing of the steps that lead down to the Kotel or Western Wall. If we have an opportunity to stand in front of it, we must take a look at the lamps, because all the side lamps are turned to face the middle lamp in the middle branch. And so the 3 lamps on the right and the 3 lamps on the left all turn toward the middle branch. In this way, the menorah is designed to concentrate its light toward the center and exalt the light of Yeshua. If we're in a dark place, Yeshua is our eternal menorah light, and his light will overcome that darkness. Yeshua shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome him, according to Yochanan 1, verse 5. Shavuot directs our gaze to the middle branch and to the unconquerable light of King Messiah. Excuse me. A synagogue custom on Shavuot depicts this. Many synagogues place a garland of roses on their Torah scrolls on Shavuot. Crowning the Torah suggests crowning the living Torah, Yeshua. Crowning Yeshua with a rose garland prepares him in the manner of a Hebrew wedding. In the ancient Hebrew wedding, the Hatan, the bridegroom, wore a flower garland on his head. Conversely, the Kala, or bride, wore a golden crown depicting the walls of Jerusalem. Crowning a Torah scroll with roses depicts a bridegroom, which is Yeshua's title in Yochanan 3:29. Traditional scripture readings for Shavuot are fiery and transcendent. They include Exodus 19 and 20, Ezekiel 1 and 2, and Habakkuk 3. Believers add Acts chapter 2, which occurs on Shavuot, and many congregations read a Megillah or scroll of Ruth. Ruth is a harvest story and takes place at the time of Shavuot. Ruth is also filled with Remez teachings. A Remez is a hint of a greater truth. The Sod-level teachings in Ruth reveal mysteries. Ruth is a Moabite princess who abandons everything safe and familiar to follow her mother-in-law Naomi to Israel. Ruth is young. She could easily return to her people and be treated as a celebrity in the royal set. But Ruth's name means friend, and she is a friend to Naomi. She also seeks the fullness of spiritual truth, and Naomi's name means fullness. This is evident in her noble confession in Ruth 1, verse 16. Your people shall be my people, and your God shall be my God. With Naomi's help, Ruth discovers spiritual meaning and fullness at the time of Shavuot. When we read Ruth on Shavuot, we recall the fullness that we have in Yeshua. The rhythms of God encompass all areas of life, and Ruth is a perfect example. Ruth's story has a rhythm which reflects our story. Ruth is a Gentile woman who marries a Hebrew redeemer from the tribe of Judah. Likewise, Yeshua followers will one day marry a Hebrew redeemer from the tribe of Judah, just as Ruth does. Naomi instructs Ruth to wash and anoint herself and to put on her best clothes in Ruth 3, verse 3. Metaphorically speaking, Ruth washes herself to remove acts of idolatry. She anoints herself to accept God's instructions. She clothes herself to embrace a Sabbath rest. In Ruth 3:1, Naomi asks, "My daughter, shall I not seek rest for you, that it may go well with you?" This infers a Sabbath rest. Here again, the rhythms of God are rhythms of preparation. Ruth makes bridal preparations, and these preparations will bring her a Sabbath rest. We see this echoed in Revelation 19, verse 7. The Lamb's Kala, or bride, makes herself ready just as Ruth does. We wash, signifying the immersion of Acts 2:38. We anoint ourselves, allowing the Holy Spirit to touch and transform us, as Yochanan 3, verse 5 urges. And we dress in our best clothing, which denotes righteous deeds, in Ephesians 2, verse 10. Naomi also instructs Ruth regarding Hamakom, the place. She says in Ruth 3, verse 4, "Then it shall be when he lies down that you shall notice the place where he lies." Within these words are secrets of redemption. The place, Hamakom, is one of the names for the Almighty in Genesis 28, verse 11. In that verse, Jacob comes upon the place, Hamakom, and dreams of a ladder reaching to the heavens. Thus, Hamakom is a synonym for Adonai himself. This connection is reinforced in Gematria, the numeric value of Hebrew letters. When we square the numeric value of the 4 letters in the sacred name Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, we get the same numeric value as Makom, or place. Adonai is our place of purpose and renewal. Hamakom, the place, is also a synonym for the temple in 1 Kings 8, verse 30. In Ruth 3, Ruth pursues Boaz at Hamakom, the place. Thus, symbolically, Ruth pursues him through Adonai's name and the temple. In concrete terms, she lays the foundation for the Shekinah, the divine presence, to dwell in the world. Ruth returns from the threshing floor, and Naomi responds, "Wait." Boaz willingly accepts the role of redeemer and all the obligations that go with that. But what he must do as kinsman redeemer takes time. If Ruth is to participate in the Torah and in the righteousness of Boaz, she must wait. What we glean from this is that the rhythms of God bring hope in the waiting. Are we waiting on the Holy One for something? We righteously wait by cooperating with him. Biblical waiting is not passive. It is demonstrated by active dependence upon and obedience to God. How we wait for him will not change his timing, but it will determine how we respond to him when the appointed time comes. Ruth has hope as she waits during the Shavuot season. In Ruth 4:9, Boaz declares that he will redeem. In this verse, he identifies Naomi's dead sons as Chilion and Machlon. The order of their names, however, is reversed from the way they appear in Ruth 1, verse 2. By writing their names in reverse, the author of the book of Ruth implies that death has been reversed. Death becomes life. Limitations become blessings. Sickness and frailty become health and strength. We may be dealing with limitations and weakness, as Ruth and Naomi are, but we never forget Shavuot and how the Almighty transforms their circumstances at the time of this festival. Shavuot is a transcendent feast, a royal feast. The giving of the Torah at Sinai, the giving of the Spirit at Zion. Biblical rhythms reveal that our own circumstances may pivot on Shavuot. Naomi declares Ruth to be better than 7 sons, and 7 sons is a metaphor for the rhythms of Shavuot, since 7 species are required at the altar on Shavuot. 7 species and 7 sevens, the time we count to reach Shavuot, are like the 7 sons that Naomi mentions. Those 7 sons are like those who come to present their first fruits offerings at the altar on Shavuot. Shavuot is so critical to the book of Ruth. It is said to be the most defining festival for King David, who is a descendant of Boaz and Ruth. David is born on Shavuot, according to tradition. He is crowned on Shavuot, and he dies on Shavuot. On Shavuot, Kepha, empowered by the Ruach HaKodesh, mentions this. In Acts 2:29, he states, "Brothers, I can confidently say that David died and was buried. His tomb is with us to this day." Now, Kepha's audience makes the connection. Shavuot is the anniversary of King David's death. David's bones are there in the city with them. But Yeshua's bones are not. The Messiah has resurrected. The rhythms of God tie the death of David to the life of Yeshua. Rhythms of God are all-encompassing. His rhythms are rhythms of preparation, rhythms of work, rest, and worship, rhythms of light, and rhythms which bring hope while we wait. Shavuot is a festival of expectation and simcha, rejoicing. We rejoice in Adonai's Torah. We celebrate his Ruach HaKodesh, or Spirit. We delight in his Redeemer, Yeshua, and we triumph as a community of celebrants. In the Shavuot tradition of staying up all night on Shavuot, we celebrate Torah, Spirit, Messiah, and one another. My book, The Feast of Adonai, suggests an hour-by-hour activity schedule for staying up all night on Shavuot. I'm Valerie Moody of Covenant Footsteps Ministries. Shalom.